Welcome back to the Becoming Mama podcast. It's Sam here, and I want to give you the heads up if you haven't seen the title that this is a birth story podcast. So if you are not in the place to receive that right now, you're welcome to skip this episode. I also want to give you the heads up that we are talking about medicated versus unmedicated births in part of this podcast, and I hope the message is clear that we hope you choose whatever helps you feel empowered and connected to your motherhood with the information that you have. We're just here to provide information, share our experiences, and give our personal opinions on what we want for our births. That is it. I hope that you enjoy Teddy's birth story. Welcome back to Becoming Mama. My name is Sam, and I'm here with my wonderful co-host, Emmy.
Hello, glad to be here.
And today we are going to be unpacking my son's birth, Teddy's birth, and talking about his birth story and all the lessons learned from that. But before we jump into it, we want to do our little banter at the beginning because
it's just fun.
It is fun. And the cool thing, I was talking to someone who listened to the podcast, and they said, you guys are really genuine in your reactions to each other's stories. And I'm like, because we really haven't talked that much over the last 10 years. Like, this is all real conversation. And so I appreciate getting to re-know you on all of these different topics.
Yeah, totally. Like, I have not heard this story. I don't know it.
Yeah, I'm excited to share
really
it.
excited to hear it.
Oh, awesome. We're going to just do a little random question at the beginning of this podcast to kick us off. So the question is, what is your biggest priority right now? And we're going to say kids aren't included in this because that's a given that they're one of our biggest priorities. But what is your biggest priority outside of your children?
And you want me to go first? I'm guessing.
I do.
Is work included?
Yeah, I'd say.
Okay.
What about work? Is there like a specific project or?
Yeah, you may not know this, but I am a user-generated content creator, and it's also known as UGC. So I create content for brands and growing the number of partnerships that I have. So I currently have 3 consistent monthly partnerships, and they're just so fun. I love them. Samantha knows this, that both of us actually were in 7th grade. We wanted to be actresses.
Oh, yeah.
True. And
oh, yeah.
That is sort of like that's what I'm doing when I get to create this content. It's sort of like living out my childhood dream. And it's really fun. I love it so much. I get to get my kids involved. So yeah, I would say growing the number of partnerships. That's mine right now. Okay, what's yours?
That's awesome. Mine is my journal and day planner. I shared last week that I got signed with a publisher, which is super exciting. And so now that is my number one priority to get my business rolling there. And then after that, hoping to start some monthly mom groups where we can focus on one thing for mom a month and have it be a little more focused and center mom and
be an example of one of those groups.
Yeah. So like values, establishing values. Okay. 1 month we work on just getting clear about our values and doing one thing for that focus that's easy, simple, but just one focus of the month, and then have that evolve throughout the year. So adding these different focuses to help you feel more like a human with an identity versus just kind of flailing through life in mom mode, Yeah. So
can I share my favorite one? My favorite one of those like little things that centers me in my values?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I started doing this last year, but I was feeling like I never do anything I actually want to do as a mom. Like, we do all of these things all the time. We have these crazy busy days, but I never actually do anything like the Pinteresty stuff, like the things that I would love to be doing if I had all the time. Mm-hmm. And so what I started doing, I tuned in, I was like, okay, what's one thing I could do like every day that would meet that deep desire I have to be a Pinterest mom? And I realized I could do lunchbox jokes. So now I go on Etsy, I print off 200 at a time. I cut one off every day, and I put, 2 technically now, put one joke in each kid's lunchbox, and then I wear the badge of honor that I am the best mom that has ever graced this planet. Awesome. And the kids like them, and the real value in them, I think, actually, and I will not drone on and on, but is that I read the jokes, not out loud, but I read them myself. And I know that sometimes the kids might not know, that they might not understand the joke, even though they're for kids, they're for their age group because they're all aged out. I give them the background knowledge they're going to need. So the other day, it was a joke about something related to coconuts, and it had to do, in order to understand the joke, you had to know what a coconut looked like. And obviously my kids know what coconuts look like, but I doubt they'd be able to conjure up the image in their mind just on command for a joke. And so we had a long breakfast discussion about coconut is brown, it's round, it's furry, and so every day I'm instilling like a little bit of knowledge in them.
Yeah. That's
And
so
like
cool.
the other day there was another one. You had to know a song by the Beach Boys. You had to know what the Bahamas was. So I played them the song.
Oh, that's such a good piece for connection. Like, and I
Yeah.
think the coolest part to me is that like it's a little touch point from you during the day when they're not with you. Like it's
Yes.
like you're with them for that moment and you're connecting even when you're not there to connect. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, and sometimes I put a little note on the back, like if I know there's going to be something big that day or something like that. So it's just super
Oh,
sweet. And the kids love it, and they gain popularity points for it. Not that that matters, but the kids all,
it's fun.
the friends love the jokes more than the Fox and Twilight actually do.
That's so cute. Oh my gosh. And I mean, yeah, that not even the popularity, but just like being like bringing adding to the conversation is always fun when you have something to
Yes.
contribute, something cool, and it's like, oh, what's Fox gonna have today? That's so fun. Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll be doing some of that stuff if I can get my act together. There's a lot going on, but happy to be here, happy to have this going on too. So we're going to talk about Teddy's birth story today. Teddy is my one and only. He's 2.5 right now. And on the last podcast, when Emmy shared Fox's birth story, which was like an hour ago for us since we're filming these in one day, we kind of talked about where does a birth story start? And that was my question. And for me, I think this story starts when I started thinking about getting pregnant. And when we talk about matrescence, and if you haven't listened to that podcast, I would go back and listen to that. But when we talk about matrescence, it actually starts in this preconception phase for a lot of women. Your identity starts to shift when you start to envision yourself being a mom and getting pregnant and imagining what that would look like. And for me, that phase was a long phase. I knew I wanted to be a mom and I was ready to be a mom really early, but we just had a lot of circumstances that prevented that from coming to fruition. And like we talked about in the podcast, I believe on our Catching Up podcast, I had eating disorders for a lot of years and I would get my period intermittently, but I was without a period for a long time. I would say for the better part of a decade, I did not have a period. And so I didn't know what getting pregnant would look like for me. And I had actually just competed in a fitness competition in 2019 where I got extremely lean and lost my period for another 6 months. And actually, looking back, it was probably longer than that because I was only on my second cycle when I ended up getting pregnant with Teddy. But even when I had gained a bunch of weight back, I had stopped working out as much, I had been eating a lot more, I still wasn't getting a regular cycle. And so on March 17th, 2020, the day before like the world shut down, I went to the doctor and I just said, like, what can I do to help get this back and get it back regular, like get my cycle back? And we talked about everything, all the things I was doing, I had been doing for almost a year at that, no, over almost a year at that point. It had been about 9 months since I competed. And so I was like, I can't do anything more here. I've gained a lot of weight back. I'm at a good body weight. I'm fueling my body. I'm not working out as intensely. And she was like, well, how are your stress levels? And I was like, okay, well, how long do you got? I was working at Orange Theory at the time. I was a head coach there. And so I would start some days at 3:30 in the morning. I would end some days at 9 p.m. Sometimes it was end at 9, get up at 3. We call that a clopen, where you close and then open. And I had very minimal staff. And unfortunately, it wasn't very reliable staff. So I would get calls a lot of the time of like, I can't be there. And then I'd have to like stop what I was doing and get there. And so I was just not in a good headspace at all. And so I got put on an anti-anxiety medication. And I also, luckily for me, unluckily for the world, my Orange Theory closed the next day because of COVID. And so that was a huge blessing for me. I understand the place of privilege that comes from of saying that COVID was a blessing for me, but it really was because I was able to stop for about 2 months. I didn't work. And so I was able to relax a little bit. The medication helped a ton with my anxiety and I got my period back regularly. And then I got my period back regularly. And in August, I got pregnant. I got my positive pregnancy test the day after Shelly's wedding, one of my high school best friend's wedding, where I had partied very hard. I was at my mom's house, which was super cool, my mom and dad's house, and she was the first person I got to tell, which was really special. Then I went home and I told my husband, and he was not the most excited because he was unemployed at the time due to COVID, and he was supposed to be going on a survival reality show, a very, very, very famous one that I can't say by name, but if you think of a famous island survival show, it's that one. So we were like, okay, this is not ideal timing, but it didn't matter because I had waited so long. I was 29. I had been ready to do this for forever. And so I knew it was meant to be.
I think it's worth noting, you probably had been sleeping. Like, when you were at Orange Theory, you probably hadn't been having like a regular sleep cycle.
Oh, no. I've always struggled with sleep, but yeah, it was a disaster. A lot of sleep aids went into falling asleep at 5 p.m. so I could get up at 3, and to this day, I'm still messed up from that. So throughout the pregnancy, Teddy had a small hole in his heart and a heart murmur and enlarged kidneys. And we weren't concerned about it because my husband had the same thing and it resolved throughout pregnancy and right after birth for him. But because of that, we got to see him all the time. We got to get extra ultrasounds. We got to go about once a month or every other month. And then as we got closer, every couple of weeks, we got to go. And from very early on, they were like, oh, he's a big boy. And my husband is 6'5", was 6'6" before the military, big guy. And so I don't think he helped with that assumption. But when he was 37 weeks, when Teddy was 37 weeks, they were like, he is well over 10 pounds. And I think we need to think about possible interventions because it's going to be really hard. And as a first-time mom, that was really scary. And for me, throughout my pregnancy and throughout my life, birth was just like a means to an end. It was like, I'm going to have to do it. I'm not looking forward to doing it. I know it's going to be painful, but what's the alternative? I don't have a birth. There's this baby is going to leave my body in some way. And I just want it to happen with as little fuss as possible. I wanted to walk out of it with as little emotional damage as I could, just knowing my mental health history. And I just wanted him here. So I didn't think too much about it, but I did take a few, unfortunately, online pregnancy classes because we were in the heat of COVID. There was nothing. So I took some pregnancy courses. I took some birth classes, and it was really just all about pain management. And the buffet of options available to you. And so I knew kind of what I wanted going into that. But other than that, I didn't have a really great birth plan. I didn't even have a playlist made until I was in the hospital. And I was like, okay, I actually might want this. And it's one of the best things I ever did. I would encourage everyone to do that because I have the song He Was Born Into the World too. It's Free Spirit by Khalid. And it's just it says, I've been loving more and living less, highs and lows with no regrets. And I'm like, this is motherhood for me. And so, yeah, highly recommend. Anyway, back to where we are. So when they were telling me how big he was, I was like, okay, well, let's just plan it then. That's fine. I'm a planner. It was like, okay, we'll put a date on the calendar. I was scheduled to be induced at 39 and a half weeks. Again, they were saying he was going to be well over 10 pounds. I wanted to have a vaginal birth if at all possible. So for me, that felt like that was my best option with the information that I had. And we had a wonderful induction. The staff we had there was incredible. I wish I could remember her name, but she was a new nurse. She was a mom. She was middle aged. This was her second or third career. And she was just so excited to be there and so wonderful. And like I said, we made that playlist and it was just chill and things kind of progressed slowly. They gave me Pitocin. They were going to break my water, but my cervix wasn't as low as they thought it was initially. So they gave me a little more time to progress there. And I had nitric oxide and I just kind of chilled out and it was great. The only time my pain really kicked up was a few hours in and I started to really feel the contractions, and I wanted to feel the contractions. I let myself ride out the contractions until they got too much. And so, at least too much for me in my mind. So I I got the epidural. And I can't remember how far in that was, but I do remember when I was like, okay, I think I'm going to want this because it's starting to hurt really bad. I thought I was up ahead of it enough that I wasn't going to feel significant pain. And then I wasn't. And he was held up for like 30 minutes. And I remember that wonderful nurse just sitting next to me as I was like curled over. And she was just like, you got this. You're strong. You can do this. And she was like, just tell me when they're coming. And I'd be like, here comes another one. And she like breathed through it and she helped me through it and she guided me through it. And it was incredible. But I think what made it more painful was just the anticipation that I wasn't going to feel pain. Like I went into it being like, I don't want to feel pain. I don't want to feel this. So like, it just made it so much worse because I was so resistant to it and I wanted it to go away versus earlier when I had wanted it, I welcomed it and I was like, "Whoa, okay, like I could handle it a little bit more." Got the epidural, laid down, kind of waited for things to progress a little bit more. I wasn't like fully dilated or anything, but the nurse started popping in and out and wasn't really saying anything. She was just check me, check the fetal monitor, and then go back out. And then eventually she came back in and she's like, okay, we're seeing some really big dips in his heart rate every time you have a contraction. And that's indicating to us that the cord might be wrapped around his neck, which is super normal, not a big deal, but we just need to monitor his heart rate to make sure that doesn't go too low or that doesn't last too long. And eventually it did start to last too long to their comfort level. And so they brought in the doctor and they wanted to get him out. So they encouraged me to start pushing. And I did. And at this point, the nurses had switched out. And I had this nurse who was just super dry and like she was just there to be there. And I was like trying to figure out how to push as a first time mom. Like I had watched these videos and the one resource that I really loved that I will definitely use again was, I believe it's called Nurture birthing course. And it's more for natural births. But I was like I'm like, okay, I get it now. Like just like push like this and like exhale like this. And she was like, just stop thinking about it so much. And I was like, okay. And so I just kept doing what I was doing. And then the doctor came in and he was helping kind of move things along a little bit because of the cord. And I remember specifically starting to feel the pressure of him on my pelvic floor. And I will never forget like looking at my husband and saying like, he's right there. He's right there. Like I don't know why. Like it gives me goosebumps every time, but it was just that realization that he was right there. Like I was going to meet him in any second. Alongside this, the whole time this is going on, my husband and I had a bet with our whole family about the due date. And this was before we had the induction scheduled, but he had said that April 21st, I had said April 22nd, and it was 11:30 p.m. And I was like, God damn it, this guy's going to win. I was like, damn it, because I can feel him right there. I was so close. And then the heart rate started to drop more. And he's like, we got to get him out. So they used a vacuum and they pulled him out. And when they did, they pulled him out kind of sideways. And so that created a hematoma on my labia, which was super painful, super inconvenient. I think I talk about it in the first 40 days podcast. But regardless, they got him out. I was lucky enough to have him placed right on my chest. And the pictures that my husband took are just like encapsulate everything. Like I just, same as you, like I felt, and I'm so grateful to have felt complete in that moment. It was that of like it's you. I know this is you and this is us and it's you and me. And like we are like the other half of me was there and it just was like, I can't, you just can't put it into words like that love of like, oh. And the crazy thing about that is I think about it now where I was like, oh, this is it. I thought I loved you in my tummy, but like, this is it. And then they smile for the first time and you're like, oh, this is it. Or they come into your bathroom in the morning and ask you if you got your sink on Amazon, like you did this morning. And I was like, oh, this is it. Like, oh my God, like you're just like the things you say. But it was just immediate. And I loved him so much. And I got to have that golden hour, skin to skin, a little bit of breastfeeding, got Jersey Mike's cold subs delivered, got a Prosecco delivered. I had like one sip and I was like, I don't want that. But they brought it to me. It's like, you think the things you think you're going to want and the things I didn't think I was going to want, like Jersey Mike's. And then it was actually the first time I'd had Jersey Mike's. And let me tell you, oh my God.
I love it too.
No,
It's so good.
that will never be topped. Never. That was the best meal of my life. But yeah, we got moved into another room, and the first night was blissful and wonderful, and then night 2 was a disaster, and we talked about that on the first 40 days podcast. But it went really smooth, and I don't regret it because it taught me a lot about myself and what I want to do differently, kind of like you and Fox. And I didn't understand or even know how motherhood would become so deeply spiritual to me. It already was a little bit. Like when I was trying to get pregnant, I learned about spirituality and I surrendered to spirituality, and I went through a really good phase of being like, so what if anybody thinks this is stupid? So what if anybody thinks this is naive? I'm going to talk to my baby, and I'm going to manifest my baby into this world and welcome them into this world. And whether it worked or not, it was a beautiful experience. And I felt connected to Teddy my whole pregnancy. And I think that was a lot to do with it, because I did talk to him. I didn't realize how the birth would play into that. So since becoming a mom, I recognize how much of my birth didn't mirror who I am as a mom now, where I see so much power and strength in motherhood. I was always like oh, there's no shame in my game. Like, I'll take the pain meds. I don't need to go through the pain. And the thing is that I didn't understand then, and I feel now. And I'm not saying this, anybody has to subscribe to this, or that if you did take pain meds on every single one of your 27 births, that you're not a woman. But what I understand now is that birthing without pain meds isn't about the pain. It's about the power. It's about the strength. It's about doing what my body was meant to do without assistance. And I feel like from the resources I've experienced and hearing stories like yours, and again, that's not to say that it's fine to do that if it's aligned with who you are and what you want. And at that time, that was aligned with who I was and what I wanted. And that's why I don't look back and regret it. I think I did everything that was aligned with who I was at the time. Who I am now is somebody who sees motherhood as strength, who sees motherhood as power, who sees childbirth as empowering. And childbirth is dominated by conversations of pain. Absolutely dominated. Like I said, my traditional birthing class was just about pain management. It was about your buffet of options. What do you want to take away the pain versus how can we harness your power to get you through this? Like, without not talking about the ritualization of it, the rite of passage, you are about to become someone new, and this going through this is going to change you in the most beautiful way and in the most powerful way. Instead, it was, you're going to have a baby. Both things are valid. Both things are true. But I want to, in the future, I want to experience it to its fullest, and I want to discover that power if I can, if I'm lucky enough to. So that's my biggest takeaway from my birth story, was how much I learned about myself from it. I see a lot of patterns of escapism and stuff in my life from that, and it's really empowered me to move forward differently. Any questions or comments on that?
Oh, it was just such a beautiful story. I loved it so much. And it's just fun to see the twinkle in your eye when you talk about meeting Teddy for the first time, and, you just like gracing his presence and him gracing yours. And it's amazing. I love it. It's tear worthy for sure.
Yeah, it was. My husband cried. I've only seen my husband cry twice, I think. One time was when we were in a drunk fight in college, so that doesn't really count. And then the other was watching Interstellar. He always cries at Interstellar every time. I don't know why, but he just doesn't cry outside of that. But he did tear up when I gave birth, and he was like, it was only because you were crying so hard. He's like, I wasn't crying really about the birth because he wasn't as connected to it as I was, but I was just such a mess. It made him cry. So yeah, it was definitely best moment of my life. 10 out of 10 recommend.
Obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
Tell us
We are
about
here.
naming Teddy.
We just he's Theodore Jones, and I'm Samantha. My husband is Thomas, and we've always really liked being able to be called what we want to be called. Like being able to be Tom or Thomas or Tommy, and me, Sam, Sammy, Samantha, whatever. And so we wanted him to have that option. So that was one thing we kept in mind as we were picking a name for him. And then one day I was just like, what about Theodore? And he was like, I like Theodore. And it just so happens that we also had watched Ted Lasso during my pregnancy, watched Schitt's Creek, and Tom's great grandfather's name is Theodore, which we did not know. And then his middle name is my mom's maiden name. So my middle name is my dad's name. So I'm Samantha Scott. And so I wanted to honor my mom in Teddy. And so it's Theodore Jones.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah, he started to call himself Theodore too, which is absolutely adorable. He usually, you'll ask him what his name is, and he goes, Teddy Jones Hall. And now it's like, what's your name? I'm Theodore. It's like, you are. I love that.
Okay, so we don't know this for sure, but most likely Samantha, should she choose to have more children, will probably be the next one. Maybe. We don't know. Nothing's final.
No.
But okay,
Not pregnant.
Twyla are both named from shows. Twyla from Schitt's Creek. And so you have to keep this going now.
Oh God. I did ask Teddy because we are thinking about starting to try. And I am excited to have Emmy's guidance throughout my pregnancy, and I think we'll have some special episodes should I be lucky enough to get pregnant. I said, "What do you want to name your brother or sister?" And he said, "Conan." It's like,
love it.
Not Conan. Sorry, Conan. Like Conan the Barbarian. And I was like, "How about not Conan?" And he's like, "Colonel." I was like, "Colonel?" He's like, "Corn kernel." I'm like, oh my gosh. And it's so funny because he named his other toy like corn on the cob. Corn. Yeah. Corn cob? No, corn. It's corn. That the Iowa runs deep in him, even though he's never lived in Iowa. So stay tuned. I will not be calling my child Colonel, even as a joke. I don't.
No.
People are gonna think we're I just imagine people thinking we're like a huge military family if we call our kid Colonel.
Oh my gosh, I hope everyone's laughing as hard as we are at this.
With Tom being ex-military, they're like, geez, he's really gonna let that go. He named his daughter Colonel?
You sounded just like your mom when you said that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, well, that is Teddy's birth story, and grateful he's here, and grateful for the lessons learned, and I would love to hear your feedback on if that resonates with you. Thank you all for being here as always. If you want to connect with us, all of our information is down in the show notes, our social medias, our websites, Emmy's birth story listening services are there, and we'll be back next week. Bye.
Thanks for listening.
Welcome back to the Becoming Mama podcast. I don't know what my name is. My name is Ka.